stuck in. The first question we've got today is from Leslie, and she says, I know I'm perceived as vulnerable by my community. For some reason, people always want to help me, in inverted commas. Long story short, I learned to be helpless to gain the love and attention of my mother. So as many children are, I'm a master of vulnerability. I also feel vulnerability is necessary to magnetize your target market, but I have trouble figuring out where the line is.
Hey. Okay, I mean, first of all, way above my pay grade. So anything I'm about to say should really be couched in that there's, I think, other people who can make these distinctions a lot better than me. But for what it's worth from my own experience in this, I remember a dating coach, Carlos Zuma, and he said, because men had a similar thing where it's like, well, don't women like sensitive guys? And he said, yes, guys that are sensitive to them, not that they take everything personally and everything is an affront, and there's a kind of weakness that comes from that. So there's something here. I was talking with Lisa Bloom, who I've been promoting around storytelling and marketing. And she said, there's certain stories that just shouldn't be shared. And some of those stories are stories like, I'm telling it because I need the audience's approval. I need their love. I need their respect. If you're telling a story from a place of need instead of a place of generosity, tell it to your friends. Tell it to your therapist, but don't bring it on stage. Don't share it on social media because you're not going to get the response that you want. So much of this comes down to what is our agenda, and often our hidden agenda. As I say a lot, is your agenda the overt agenda to just get to the truth of, is this a fit, or is it a hidden agenda to get respect and be valued, which is the posturing thing, or to be loved and liked, which is the collapsing thing? And so I would make a distinction between collapse and vulnerability. Collapse is a kind of shoulders in, and physiologically we're just making ourselves smaller. And if you go to marketingforhippies.com/vibe chart, VIBE chart, you can see this, and maybe Betty would grab that link to put in the write-up. But collapse and vulnerability, different things. And even some people I know will quibble with the term vulnerability. But let's just say there's a kind of openness about our lives, an openness to the world, and that's great. In the right place, in the right time, that's wonderful. Of course, there's a time not to be open. There's absolutely a time to be closed. So we don't want to make a religion out of any of this, or a fundamentalism that vulnerability and openness are good and being closed and guarded is bad. But collapse is manipulation. Collapse is a way that we go about getting our unmet needs met. It's got nothing to do with the other person. It becomes a bartering, a trade. If I'm giving enough, will you love me then? I'm willing to have my needs not matter and make your needs matter if you'll meet this deeper need to be loved and respected. But my need for food or for sleep or for all that will be set aside. So, I mean, this is the domain of therapy. There's deep healing work that's needed around this. Like, why do I keep doing this pattern? And yeah, vulnerability is not a tactic to use in marketing. And I see this a lot, even email subject lines saying, this is really vulnerable for me to share. And I just think, no, if it were really vulnerable, you might not be sharing it. And often, of course, it's just a bait and switch technique anyways. But why are people paying us? They're not paying us to be our therapists. They're not paying us to be our healers. And I'm not saying there's not a place to share these things. Of course there is, with your friends, with people who love you. There's also a difference between sharing and dumping. Here's what's up for me. in a way of like, I'm not asking you to deal with it. I'm carrying it myself. And just so you know, this is what's up for me right now. I'm having a hard day, but I'm still here to deliver what I came to deliver. And dumping, which is offloading onto people. So, yeah, if people see us as a kind of wounded bird, then that's something to work on. If that's not what you want. If it's like, okay, that worked for me for a while and that's not the pattern I want to have, then there's two sides of this. One side is the internal, the therapy, the healing work, do all of that. The other side is we really start to get clear about what do we want? Who do we want to work with? What kind of work do we want to do? And we start building the architecture that can facilitate that. And if our boundaries are no good, we need to structure those into the system of our business. I mean, there's a reason that most artists have agents, because if they didn't have an agent making sure they got paid, they would just do it for free. So, sometimes you need an assistant. Sometimes you need somebody who can handle those things while you're, learning how to say no. These are thoughts that occur to me. There's probably more if I knew more about the situation. But Betty, is there anything that occurs for you on this?
Just one thought that I have heard previously about what to share and what not to share in terms of our own wounds. And somebody once said that about sharing once the wound is closed, when there's a scab, like once it's healed over, and then you kind of, do you think that kind of agrees with what you're saying about not dumping, because it's not kind of live anymore, it's started to heal, isn't it?
It's good. It makes me think of, I actually just want to write this down because I think this is probably useful for people. Show them the scar, don't show them the wound.
Right.
Yeah, brag about the scar. Oh man, you get you're high ranked on bragging rights when you've got a scar. But showing the wound, who are you showing it to? People aren't necessarily going to be good with that. That's not wise. I've been vulnerable, like really vulnerable, twice in my life on social media, where I was just really like, the wound is gaping, and I regretted it both times. I recommend against it for just about everybody. Even if you're thick-skinned, just remember a wound is an opening into that thick skin. So just for the love of ourselves, it's probably best not to. And Martin Shaw talks about, he says, dipping your quill, your pen into the ink of your wound and writing with it is not a big accomplishment. It's great for you. It can be very helpful, but that's not what to put into the marketplace. You wait until the wound is healed, and then you do your writing from the place of having been wounded, not being in the presence of the wound. It's not that you can't take what you wrote when you were wounded and share that later and recontextualize it, but this can become a dumping. It becomes a desperate drowning, and it's just especially from a business standpoint, not that helpful, because why would they spend money with us? Oh, this person's in bad shape. Okay, wait till they've recovered maybe and come back. Do you want to be the wounded bird, or do you want to help wounded birds? Is a big choice. There's nothing wrong with being a wounded bird. I'm not trying to say that doesn't belong. Of course, we all have times where we're wounded and we're hurt and we need help. And when you're a wounded bird, it's good to be that. Don't try to not be that. Don't, as Byron Katie says, don't pretend that you're beyond your own evolution. There's no good, faking it, because you'll pay for that later too. And sometimes what it says is, it's too soon for me to be doing this work. What I need to do is get a job that doesn't require this of me, this kind of emotional vulnerability, while I build up. And then later, I can start a business and do this. But sometimes it's just too soon. We're just not ready. And that's good to know.